Welcome back, Hunters. I'm the SurvivalVis, and we return Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak for our finale episode, which is just going to be almost like a podcast, sit down, talk, and go over how Sunbreak has been as an entire game or that. While that's going on, I'm also going to just try to preview some of the decoration items that you can place here in your room in Elgato. And it's a neat little area to see. Own little bed, table, desk, and that. You do actually kind of just set up inside the little ship that takes you back and forth, but... no, not the buddy board. Who do I gotta talk to for the decorations? Is it you? I'll just see about getting that started, and then I'll start going into the full talk and almost like review and reflections on it all. There we go, room customization. Yeah, so let's see. We've got the flag ornament. We can place... Oh god, there's going to be a lot to go through, so I'll just slowly scroll through these as I talk. So, I guess the starting point is, would I recommend Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, or Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak? Easily. They are very good Monster Hunter games. I do admit one of the things that I feel like kind of happened with Rise into Sunbreak was that because of how much dynamic movement the players got, it felt like you were kind of able to really overcome a lot of stuff and trivialize a lot of the early game really quickly, if not like outright from the start. Like having the wire bugs that allow you to get vertical movement to hop over attacks, as well as things like the counters and a few other really super useful things, kind of gave me a feeling of almost playing Monster Hunter Generations and, in a sense, Generations Ultimate. Whereas the player has so much superb ability to react and dynamic control of themselves, the monsters become just really trivial and easy to deal with. Like, when it came to Generations, if you had the Adept style equip, which was where if you would dodge anywhere near an attack or through an attack, you'd get iframes and a little boost for it. And being a gunner main like I am, that basically trivialized the entire game in a way. It wasn't until Generations Ultimate would come along where the monsters would start getting a bit more like combos and even felt like specifically designed with attacks to counteract that ability. So again, Rise, it feels like you can super easily overpass a lot of the monsters in high rank and that it kind of wears off really quick. But then once you get into Sunbreak and you start getting some of these other monsters that are more both damage dealing and more combo intensive, that's where it starts feeling like that's where the proper meat of the game is, that the player's ability starts evening out with what you're facing against. And then as we saw with Primordial Malzeno in the past couple of episodes, it almost gets taken ludicrously far in order to keep challenging the player. So it's definitely not like the classic Monster Hunters of like 3 Ultimate, 4 Ultimate. I'd even say Monster Hunter World would be a classic one still. Well, kind of. Until the, what was it? The Clutch Claw came along. World was a pretty classic Monster Hunter. But then once the Clutch Claw came in there, I feel like it changed things up a little too much. And I do kind of feel like the wire bugs are in quintessence, or quintessentially, kind of how the Clutch Claw was for Iceborne. They are so useful and so handy, it feels like it's detrimental not to use them. Now granted, when I was playing with a light bowgun, I could get away with not using like the burst shot or the fanning maneuver, but there were certain ones where it did come in super, super handy to use, and the one that is easily the fallback that I would have relied on always was the counter shot, because it gave you that iframe and even a little bit of damage to get out of stuff. So that's one of the spots where, again, I feel like it might be a little too taking out of Monster Hunter in some regard. Because if you have such a reliable way to escape a lot, then to challenge the player, you have to overcome or design against that in particular. So the only way to do that is with some stuff that can feel like all of you've relied on is now gone. It has its merits and has some negatives to it. It's kind of, you have to wait and see what you think. If I get into anything else for like Sunbreak, where would I kind of like rank Rise and Sunbreak when it comes to the games? I'd probably put them on par with Generations and Generations Ultimate. I think I might put them a little ahead. I might only actually put Sunbreak a little ahead of Generations Ultimate. Because I do like that there was a pretty dynamic hunting roster to go around and see. And they did have a bit of a way of keeping it forward and in place to be done. Like, having the anomaly investigations, I think it's a decent approach towards the endgame for Monster Hunter, but there was also some nitpicks I had with it. One of the big ones being, I don't actually think I would put its endgame, like the anomaly investigations and that, above the guiding lands for Iceborne as like an endgame thing to tackle. Reason being, when it came to Iceborne, it was a lot easier to try to, I think, get specific monsters lured out than trying for finding specific anomaly investigations when it comes to Sunbreak. Like, how you kind of upgrade through the endgame of Sunbreak once you've reached the full end is you have to farm up the investigation levels, get the anomaly parts, and then you can buy upgrades and that with the anomaly parts. The only issue with that is when you come across something where it's like, you get all these other weapons up so far, but then you have to dial way back to try to get, like, say, something, a Great Azuchi at its first anomaly rank drops. I do know there are the anomaly quests to go after the monsters, but the rewards for it feel like you only get... I'm actually trying to think of how much you get for rewards, because you can get a chance at some of the rewards if you break the parts. But if you have something like Great Azuchi, which only has 2 parts to break, you're only getting like 2, maybe 3 of that anomaly material, if at all. I think it would have been better if they kind of did what they did for Generations Ultimate, where as you fought Deviants, the next level up could sometimes give you tickets to the previous level you had fought. So it didn't feel like you had to go all the way back and go through the full series again, or really farm that hard. You could have kept advancing and getting some merits to help you further along there. Another thing is, again, trying to get the specific investigation you were after could be very, very difficult. Oh, little Velocidrome Cuckoo. Or Guku. That's actually the little duck from Monster Hunter Frontier as your, like, Poogie replacement. So yeah, when I look at the endgame for Sunbreak, it is nice that it does have all the monsters can have some utility towards it. You don't feel like you're just going after the same ones over and over, even though sometimes you have to do that in order to get your anomaly investigation level up. It still does feel like it wasn't quite as good as it could be. Aw, little maiden Poogie. I'm trying to think of what else I want to talk about. The monster variety for Sunbreak was really, really good. I think it actually did some pretty good things in taking steps away from a lot of the monsters that we've kind of had their families more bloated or inflated by. Like, when I think of the Brute Wyverns, all we really got for Rise and even Sunbreak was just Baroth and Anjanath, whereas some entries in the series, like, I think even World had, or let's say Iceborne, had Urgon, Brachydios, Baroth, Anjanath, Deviljho, Glavenus, and you had some subspecies to them as well. It was nice that we got some monsters that were out of different families and expanded on that didn't have that much in them before. Like Garangolm is a great example. Another Fang beast that used the Rajang skeleton. Or seeing the Shogun Senator and Daimyo Hermitor back. Just seeing monsters and families that we didn't see much of, helping bring back and have some variety in that to it. Let's see. Okay, we've been through all those. Is there anything else, or are they all just trinkets? Okay, it looks like I've actually already gone through all the decorations that I have here, so... let me just see if there's a spot I can sit and we'll keep chatting. That doesn't look like it. So yeah, we'll just kind of... let me see what I'll just quickly do. You know what, let's put it on, yeah, that, because that's a really nice looking picture there. If I were to say, is there anything I'd like to bring forward or felt like Sunbreak was lacking, it probably would have to be that the monsters feel natural in the world. Like, the maps in that I think are fine. They feel wild in that. I don't like how they did the little endemic life, where it was more you pick it up as little power boosts. They felt more like an item than an animal. Whereas World had it, the endemic life was natural animals just out and about. You couldn't really... You couldn't interact with most of them aside from capturing them, but some could be as much of a help for you as a hindrance, like the Paratoads. But Sunbreak and Rise, it was basically, here's your power-up animal, scoop her up and just use it again. I do also wish the elemental blights, which you could inflict using, like, say, the Mud Beetle or the Thunder Beetle, you could have actually generated that just by using that elemental damage against a monster. So that way, even if it's not the greatest element to be using against a monster, there's still a benefit you could build up and get a payoff for, like inflicting Fire Blight on a monster or inflicting the Thunder Blight to get a daze off easier. Stuff like that I do like the inclusion of, it's just, it felt like it was kind of more to incentivize you to use the power-up animals than incorporated into the combat of Monster Hunter there. Another thing I mentioned when it came to Primordial Malzeno are the super attacks. They do have a place in Monster Hunter, but I think there's also a little bit of a line that has to be carefully tread with them. If you have the lead-in be something where if you get hit, you're kind of guaranteed to be hit by the super following that can one-shot you, I don't know how I feel about that, because I'd say Monster Hunter is more of a back and forth than something like Dark Souls that's meant to be brutally punishing for you. You're meant to be engaged with the hunt, back and forth, sometimes taking hits, healing, staying in there, but being able to keep that going on and on. Top endgame, finalized hunts, I can see you wanting to have like the hazard level monsters where they will hit brutally hard and they are meant to try to kill you. But on the same token, I don't think every single monster you kind of want that with either. Like, I think it was pretty balanced for the most part for Sunbreak. It was only some of the really end monsters, like, say, Geismagorm, as we see there, Primordial Malzeno, Lucent Narga, like, the really endgame monsters that were included in there were given stuff like that. So I do think it's something I'm a little wary of, but I think depending on how they approach the next Monster Hunter, it might be something not even to worry about. Because I kind of feel like there's two paths of development, or like two focals for Monster Hunter. You have the classic-based stuff, which is like Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, Freedom Unite, 3 Ultimate, and 4 Ultimate, where it feels more like it's almost a turn-based thing and you're learning the timings of how it goes along. The player doesn't have any really super effective accessory moves, like say the wire bugs, the hunting arts, etc. It's more you learning the timings and positioning and maximizing your stuff there. And that kind of feels more like a general style reward here. Or more, how do I want to put it? I guess traditional-esque feeling. Like again, that's turn-based, whereas Rise, Sunbreak, Generations Ultimate, because of how dynamic the player is, it feels more like a chaotic hack and slash, which is kind of weird to think because there's both a lot of overlap to the two, but also you can kind of feel distinctness if you played. And I don't know if the next Monster Hunter game will be something where they want as dynamic and action-focused as, like, Rise and Sunbreak have been. It feels better to almost have them, like, an accompanying aside with it than a main focal thing. Maybe it's just because, like, again, rose-colored glasses looking at it and that, but I feel like I got a more sense of a payoff and experience gained from having to learn the 3 Ultimate, 4 Ultimate of your timing, your positioning, and reading the monster, compared to Rise, Sunbreak, Generations Ultimate, where you're so dynamic and fluid, you don't have to read the monster all that much to just keep doing what you want. It's so easy to avoid or counter or do something that it can trivialize so much of it. I also want to see... what else? I do want to see the monsters more natural. I have mentioned that, where they just have like natural stuff they interact with the world with. They're not all, as soon as you get into the same area, they turn aggressive and try to go after you. That one felt like a real step back from World. I know the focus on Rise and Sunbreak wasn't the ecology of the monsters as much, or trying to have them as an ecosystem, but I feel like that's where Monster Hunter really shined, was trying to keep the monsters as just natural animals in their world. Trying to take it away and make it more boss fight focused feels like you could almost put a different IP in place. Monster Hunter is more so kind of about just the world of the monsters, how everything is, the interaction. I do miss how there were kind of quirky little things, like you could watch and follow, say, Great Jagras in the ancient forest, it would hunt an Apnoth and then actually deliver the food to its pack, or see certain interactions between the monsters a little more, or if you didn't engage a monster, it would actually, like, just watch you or do its own business and not mind or care about you. Rise or Sunbreak, it just focused so much on combat there that it just kind of felt like it took a little bit out of it. It felt like more of a boss rush thing than going after a real hunt. Speaking also of, like, the world and that, I do hope we don't see something like the Spirit Birds come back, or if they do, a way so it doesn't feel as tedious every single hunt you go out on. It's one of my pet peeves that I easily built from Rise and Sunbreak, but it's after you've hunted or gone on 200 quests in the same area, as much as you know the pattern to go for it, it feels like there should be something where it's just, okay, you know the pattern. Instead of having to go on it again, here's just a little thing at base camp that you get all the stuff you discovered and go after the monster you choose or wish. It's a little nitpick that I feel like people could just either drop or take or go along with, but that was something that always stuck with me. Especially when it comes to, like, say, monsters you really want to go after right off the bat, like Primordial Malzeno. Wanting to go after it first, but then having to do the whole map detour almost to get everything I wanted for the stats to then try. I also kind of want to see them get away from the health as a resource for your damage. Like, towards the end of Sunbreak, we had the Dereliction of Geismagorm, we had the Bloodlust from Chaotic Or Magala. We kind of had a... I don't think I could really qualify it as much, but the Dragon conversion of Risen Glow, or Risen Crimson Glow of, like, your elemental stuff. But I feel like that can be a bit dangerous of a thing to get into. Like, if the player is capable and competent, they understand that health is a resource in that, but I could also see when it comes to multiplayer and people so used to maybe not having to worry about it as much, it could become a crutch where people forget that they have to mind their health more. And it causes a lot more issues online play there. It's something I don't know if it'll be carried forward because that does depend all on the skills or that. And actually, that's one thing I should talk about too. We'll get into in a moment there, but I don't know if we'll see stuff like that carry onwards past Sunbreak, or it'll just kind of be staying here. Now, onto the skills, I really do like how dynamic and how many builds it felt like could come out of this entry. Like, when it came to the end of Iceborne, it was basically Fatalis armor is your end-all be-all. That's all you'll use for anything. The end of Sunbreak here, I know there's probably, like, maximized builds that'll focus on each thing or that, but it feels like you could go elemental routes, raw routes. Heck, I think the lance has even got the, I don't know if it's both lance and gun lance or just regular lance, but you have the guard bash, which you don't even have to attack the monster. You can just guard and it will do damage back. So it feels like there's a much wider diversity for you can play how you want and not feel as penalized or like you're not doing enough damage out for it. You can take all kinds of different routes, experiment freely, stuff like that, which really helps expand, diversify what you can do in Monster Hunter. So I'd love to see if they can bring something like the skill variety forward. I do have a nitpick with the bow guns, and it is one that I have mentioned again and again when it comes to elemental builds. Dragon Element is not a good thing at all in the series. We need to have Dragon Elemental shots feel like they are more part of the bow guns themselves, and like they can actually readily access the element. Like, Primordial Malzeno is a prime example. I could use the Flaming and the Ice Elemental, but they're not really that good. They're kind of like a half measure, where you'll want to use a raw if you're a bow gunner for it. But if everybody else wants to go after Malzeno, or Primordial Malzeno, even regular Malzeno probably falls into that category. We'll even bring that up right now, because we can. Dragon Element is something that's been starting to see a lot of use as, again, you really want to use it if you can, because it has such a step up on other elements. Like, even at base Malzeno here, Dragon Element for the head is a 25, whereas your fire and your ice are only 15, and they kind of drop down quite a bit. Like, looking at the foreleg, there's a huge difference. Fire, you're basically split in half for how much it does, and then even further for ice. And then that was also the case when it came to Iceborne against Elatrian. You wanted to use Dragon Element as your best one to really go after it with to help for the Eschaton Judgments, but you don't really have a way to build that well for light bow guns unless you want to go back to camp repeatedly and repeatedly. So that is something I do hope might get looked at and adjusted, is if they are going to make the dragon element like an endgame gate crasher in a way for some monsters, I feel every weapon does have to have a steady access to it. Like, even if I go down... Yeah. Okay, well, not really Shagaru Magala. I'm trying to think of who else was another monster. That dragon element is like a really, really powerful one, and the rest just don't really stack up that well. Gaia's Magorum's actually a decent example of that. Like, you can use the thunder element, but you can see all of the other values are nowhere near the levels you would have for dragon element. You can get away with the raw build, sure. But it's one of those ones that, again, it feels like to maximize against specific monsters, you kind of almost want the elements to be able to be like your focal point. Raw will be good old general around against whatever you're after, but if you really want to get those high numbers, elemental builds and specifying them to their monsters would be a good way to tackle it. Hard to say if they'll do anything with Dragon Element. It's one of the things that I don't think has ever really been changed or adjusted in all of the series' history, so it might just keep going forward from there. Let's see, is there anything else to talk about? The paid DLC for Sunbreak. As much as it was pushed a lot for the digital events for that, I still think it was handled rather well for the game. Like, I know there was a lot of people coming out negative against it, like, why are these coming out as pay to win, or not pay to win, sorry, but paid cosmetics in that, when we have event quests that we could do to earn or access them. I think it's good balance that they had both armors you would unlock and maybe some paid stuff, because the truth is, if you did just only have Sunbreak release, and you didn't have any paid cosmetics to help along with it, I don't know if you would have been able to keep the same like quality going through for each update. Whereas at least if you do have an option for paid stuff, as long as it's like not really forced in your face to go after. Like, that's the thing too, that I think Monster Hunter's actually been rather decent for not being that obtrusive with like paid cosmetic DLC stuff. Other games can really just like slam it into your face, and you have to go through a little window to close it. I think aside from a little preview on the main screen, there's not that much that really has you having to draw or be focused on there's paid DLC. It's one of the ones where it's a nice option, but it's not forced upon you. I think it's just because of the quality of some of the stuff, like the plush weapon looks, or the weird sci-fi fantasy-ish things, that they looked so good, people really wanted them, but weren't all that willing to pay for them. So yeah, I think as long as Monster Hunter keeps treading that line where it's not shoved in the face, but it's optional along the side, I think that's an okay route to take for like paid cosmetic DLC. And definitely one thing is no pay-to-win DLC or boosts or stuff like that. Keep that out of the game, out of the series. Monster Hunter is all about your skills and your experience to progress, and it should stay that way. I think that brings me a lot of what I want to talk about. The only thing I probably have to go over is what I would like to see for like the next Monster Hunter title. And be honest, I kind of feel like I would like to see World, but with underwater combat. I know it's one that's a mixed opinion on underwater combat, but I think the big problems have been solved and almost like play tested with Rise and Sunbreak. My big issue when I did play through 3 Ultimate with underwater combat was that it didn't have a good way to dodge reliably or that well up or straight down. Like, in a 3D environment, you do want to have the ability to dodge not only in a full 360 around you, but also with the up and down as a possibility too. Now, there is a shortcut in 3 Ultimate to do so, but I don't think the dodge covered enough ground without having like an evade extender included with it. So if underwater combat does make a return, I think all they have to do is give you dodge a little bit more as like a baseline, and that could help fix a lot of issues. I don't know how it felt in Melee or Blade Master, because admittedly I was a gunner through our coverage of the series. So it might even be, though, having the dodge distance that gets you in closer to try to keep up with the monster could solve some of the issues that were present for that. But overall, I don't know where or what to expect of the next Monster Hunter. Because of what we've seen with World and Rise, there's really no predicting what they'll do next. I'd really like them to have something where it's kind of like how the Slinger was for base world, and in a sense, how the Wirebugs were as a base for Rise as well. Because, like, Sunbreak was what introduced the counter mechanic for the light bowgun. But I did like how all you got for, like, the light bowgun could be the, was it the fanning vault? Basically, the little bunny hop you could do and then shoot straight down. I really like that. Or maybe not shoot straight down, but you could do the bunny hop and plant a wyvern mine on the monster, a wyvern blast, whatever it's called. I really like that because it wasn't a... It feels so necessary you need to have it. It was just like an optional side thing that boosted what you could do or gave you some more options. That's where I think Monster Hunter's generational inclusions have to try to stay into. Is they should be something where it doesn't feel like it becomes so necessary it must be used, but it has so much versatility or utility that it's nice to have the option and gives you secondary access. Like again, for the Slinger and base world, you could use it to interact with the environment, cause rockfalls or pitfalls. You could have flash bombs with it. You could have piercing paws that would stagger a monster out of an attack. Things like that, which were really good. But then once you had the Clutch Claw, you kind of always wanted to use that for the tenderizing, the wall slams, shooting, stuff like that. Sunbreak, again, kind of fell into that as well, where certain new switch skills were so good you wanted to always use them. So again, I'm curious to see how it'll go. But I think that covers the majority of what I wanted to talk about. And I can't think of anything else. If there is, we'll probably discuss it in any comments that come in for the series. But yeah, 95 episodes, and we now bring Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak to its conclusion. Thank you all so much for joining me on this series on the channel. It's been amazing to play through it and be able to share it with you guys, and I've had a blast the entire time. I hope you have enjoyed it too. But thank you all for watching. If you have any comments, tips, or tricks, you should leave them comments right down below. Again, I'd love to have more feedback and discussion with you guys about the next Monster Hunter or anything from Rise and Sunbreak. And that wraps us up. So until I do see you in the next video or series, Hunters and Survivors, please remember, as always, to take care, stay alive, and happy hunting.